Hello, Culture Power people. It's your host, Stacey Grant-Lewis. So excited. I'm always excited whenever I have a Culture Power podcast. But today I'm particularly excited because we have Mr. Bruce Jackson here with us to talk about his book, Never Far From Home. Oh, my background's going to eat into it, but this is what it looks like. Because I'll share the link for this podcast with you on YouTube and on wherever you find podcasts as well. Mr. Bruce Jackson, please introduce yourself.
My name is Bruce Jackson. How's everyone doing? I'm the Associate General Counsel at Microsoft and Managing Director of Strategic Partnerships.
Wow, very lofty title. And I think, it's beautiful to hear that you express that, because your book, I was just telling Bruce right before we started, your life has been so interesting, mired in challenges that you've overcome, but some beautiful moments and opportunities for growth too. So let's just assume that the reader, or the listener in this case, doesn't know about your book. What would you say about your book?
I would say, first of all, the book was written really to inspire people, right? And when I say inspire people, I'm talking about people in urban America, rural America, women, immigrants, people a part of the LGBTQ plus community, all who have obstacles and barriers. And it's about inspiring them to overcome that, because the system has kind of failed some of us.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for them to be inspired, for us all to be inspired despite that, because if we don't, we're going to leave behind another incredible generation of people in each of those particular groups, and we can't afford to do that.
Right. I mean, from the get-go, from the prologue, hit me in the gut. And I don't want to give away too much. Here's the thing. I want you to go buy this book, listeners. But from the beginning of this book, your honesty has been, you put yourself out there, very vulnerable. You're a man who's accomplished a lot professionally, who's clearly, because, it's called Never Far From Home, stayed close to your roots. And somehow overcome this system that you now are an attorney in, right? And face this challenge. So without giving too much away, how would you say, when you were writing that part of the book, and you're like, you had to describe that you went to jail, right? For no fault of your own, right away, walking like a normal, or driving like a normal person with your friend. How does that still stay with you till this moment? Like, how has that influenced how you interact at work? Like, how does that influence your life?
Oh, no, it does, right? I mean, the situation you're talking about is when, I guess, it's more than one time, but I guess the one you're referring to is the one after I closed the $100 million deal at Microsoft. And we celebrated in the office, and I went to the store to buy some crabs and beers to celebrate with people of my community, public housing. Yeah. And that's when I got arrested. I think that the reality is I'm just aware of the system in which we live in. And I talk to my colleagues at Microsoft. I tell them we close a $100 million deal. I close billions of dollar deals. Yeah. But at the end of the day, when I leave and they leave, they walk out a Caucasian privileged life. And I walk out as a Black man in America, and no one is asking me, do I work for Microsoft? Did I close a $1 billion deal? That's just the reality. Right. And sure, it sticks with me. I'm constantly reminded. And when I drive, to be honest with you, and I pass the police officer, I always say to myself, let's not get stopped on a Friday, because I don't spend the weekend in jail. Spending one day or one night is bad enough, but certainly not a weekend. Right.
And then, like hearing you describe that experience of who is in the jail with you, and like empathizing with how hopeless that person might feel because they have nothing on the outside, or they have people on the outside. Clearly, just because you live in the projects does not mean you don't have people, right? So, but the system is just so, it clutches at you, right? It clutches at you. And it, even listening to you say that more than one time, well, which time? And here you are, a man living your life. Which time did I go to jail, or was I stopped? Right. So that's from the jump. Guys, when you're reading this book, this is what you're going to be walking into. It's very real. So let's keep it positive here because, we could talk about the system as much as we
Right.
want to,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And this is about inspiration and about, lifting yourself up despite your troubles. So your hustle started very young. You're a person like 10 years old, 12 years old, trying to make your way. And I never really heard it described as you're basically trying to stay busy, right? Stay busy so you wouldn't get into trouble. So
Absolutely.
I never realized that was kind of a strategy, to keep your idle hands busy.
No, there's no question about it. I mean, the incidents you're talking about selling newspapers, although we stole the newspapers to sell it, but other friends of mine were selling drugs or robbing people. So we stayed away from that. And we just stole newspaper to sell it so we can make money to help our family subsidize our lifestyle.
Right, right. So, as we go along in life, as children and as adults, we get these moments, these forks in the road. You had one with your father, who, although he wasn't present all the time, made sure that you knew that he really wasn't on board with that kind of lifestyle. And would you say that was like a huge impact for you to like choose another path because of the way he felt, or was
Oh,
that?
I think it was. My father was never a presence in my life, a constant presence.
Yeah,
However, when he intervened, it's intervention. I had intervention in
right.
life throughout, whether it was my father or someone else. But in that situation, I thank him for it, because had I continued to engage in that activity, I wouldn't be here in front of you today having this discussion. So
Right.
although he did come in and he stopped me from doing it, I think it was the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, intervention and opportunity, right? Because
Absolutely.
well, not to like take away from your aptitude, because clearly you were very good at accounting and very good at certain subjects. And people were surprised that because you're a kid of color, you're a Black kid.
Yep.
How can you be so good at accounting? Right. So some of those people were surprised and then put it aside, but other people said, well, maybe you should be here instead. Right. So
Right.
opportunity seems to be the differentiating factor.
And you need people in your life, right? I think I was fortunate to work hard, but you
Yeah.
also need different people in your life. And I had people who didn't look like me who stepped in and supported me as well as mentors. So you got to be open to that as well.
Right. Do you think that now, because you had those experiences, you go out of your way to make sure other kids or other people in your life have that same experience of being that opportunity to somebody else?
Oh, that's what I live for now, right? Because I realize the inequity that exists, right?
Yeah.
People, women and people of color. So I feel I'm compelled and obligated to do what I can to kind of make their roads a little easier and try to move some of the barriers that I was confronted with.
I also appreciated that you take away the stigma a bit of the projects, right? In America, especially, we like to group things together in these labels and say, well, this is the ghetto, this is this, and it's just a one note thing when it really isn't. People are living there, yes, some of them of low income, yes, but the reason is much more complex than people think. They assume a lot of things about your character and why you do certain things and make certain choices because you're a bad person. But is that one of the reasons that you stayed so close to your project life?
Yeah, no, I stay close. One, I never far from home. One, Microsoft Office is a mile away from where I grew up in the
The
projects.
practicality.
The practicality, and I think from a emotional standpoint, I go there often. Family and friends still live there,
Yeah.
and so I go there because it's in my heart. And I think the reality is everyone wants to live a better life. I think that's the misconception,
Yeah.
but they just don't know how. And one of the things I explain to people is the system's not designed for people to break out of it. And that's why I
Right.
would encourage people to break out. And just to make it clear, I said, if you take someone from an affluent area, wherever you live, and
Yeah.
have them grow up in the projects, and you take someone from the projects very young and put them in an affluent area, that kid in the projects who was born in an affluent area, now living in an affluent area, would do extremely well.
Yeah.
And the kid in the affluent area now living in the projects will have difficulties because the projects doesn't give you the resources or
Right.
the environment for you to reach your potential. And you would
Right.
have to ask yourself why. And so that's
Right.
why I want to encourage people until the system change to kind of break out. And you have to break out
Yeah.
despite your situation.
You either have to have that internal locus where you're the person who's driving that breakout because the
Right.
system around you, the environment is not telling you to
Not
leave.
conducive. Right.
It's making it very easy for you to stay.
Absolutely.
So, there are a lot of messages in this book, messages of hope and inspiration, but why did you think it was important to write it, first of all?
I think the reason I initially wrote it, to be honest with you, is a client of mine, entertainment client of mine, approached me and said, Bruce, you have to write a book because in our environment, people want to be entertainers or athletes. And you lived in our community, you're a part of the community, and you took a different road. And the reality is that from a percentage standpoint, there are more people who are lawyers and doctors than athletes or entertainers. So we need to let people know that there are other options. Don't discourage them from their dreams or passion, but
Right.
inform them there's other ways that they can go in different directions. So that's kind of why I initially wrote it.
Right. And, I don't want to do any spoilers, but there was that moment too when you got involved in the theater. Like kids don't think about things like that in terms of like elevating themselves and public speaking
Yeah,
and like little
absolutely.
avenues. Cause I'm sure that impacted you later on in your life, even if you
Oh
don't think
no,
it.
no,
Yeah.
no, you're absolutely right. My friends don't know that I wanted
When
to
you
be
outed you.
on Broadway, and I wanted to be a triple threat, as you read the book, and that's
Yeah.
taking dance lessons, singing, and acting lessons. They didn't know that, but certainly that helped me in my career later on in life.
So before you got to Microsoft, you were an entertainment lawyer,
Mhm.
which was so cool to read about. Like I had no idea about that world, and just like reading about your associations and and your perceptions of the people that you worked with, very interesting. Winding path that you took to Microsoft. Yeah,
No, I
very
think it
interesting.
was great. It was a great time. I think it was in the 90s. The 90s were, I think,
But the music was
musically
good.
the best time. Absolutely, there's no question about it. And I was able to represent some of the top hip hop and R&B artists during that time. So it was great. And they weren't much young. They weren't much younger than me, to be honest with you, but they trusted me with their careers.
Yeah. Yeah, well, clearly you did a good job because, a lot of them are still around. What was the most difficult part of writing the book? What was hard for you?
I think there was a lot, right? I think personally, just writing and reflecting on my relationship with my grandmother and the fact that she is not around or was not around when I started to achieve things from an academic and professional standpoint. That was extremely difficult. I
Yeah.
think getting arrested at 10 years old, just reflecting and going back to that time, and the fact that they wanted me to confess to a crime I didn't commit. And had
Right.
I done that, my life would have changed. And
Right.
the difficult part is that still goes on today, right? The Central Park Five is an example of what happens when young kids confess to a crime because they want to go home
Right.
and they
Right.
may run, right? But that's
Because
what
that's
you
the
do.
natural tendency is to run because you're
That's
fearing.
what you do. So
Right.
hopefully people get from that when a kid run, it's not always a sign of guilt. And when a kid who's 10, 11, and 12 confess to a crime, it's not because they're guilty. It may be they just want to go home.
Right. I
That's
think
what I was faced with. Say you did it and you can go home.
right. Bombarding you, right? Trying
Absolutely.
to get you into the system. It's like
No
a
question.
chattel system.
No
So,
question about it.
so that just reflecting on your grandmother's life was the most challenging part and
Yeah, it
having
was.
her. Yeah.
Personally, it was. Yep.
What did you, as you were writing, and I'm sure things came up and you made revisions and, inclusions in the book. Is there anything as you saw your life laid out on paper that you're like, I wish I had taken a different path or made a different choice or no?
I think the only thing that when I think about it, I realized when I was into the theaters, I opted not to pursue that career after high school. Instead, I opted to go to college. And I
Mm-hmm.
regret not betting on myself. And part of the reason I didn't know how to bet on myself, I should have believed in
Yeah.
myself. But I took the position that many people I know who were in the arts, many of them end up working in restaurants and bartenders.
You're not wrong.
So the lesson learned is that don't measure your potential or your success based on other people's failures, which is
Yeah.
what I did. And I should have just bet on myself and believe in myself because I think now, knowing what I know, I would have been successful as an actor.
Well, there's still time, Bruce Jackson. It's not over.
Right, it's not, and I've been given some serious thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, this book alone, you could be involved in like getting this to a screen, I think. I know Viola Davis, if you're listening, please help Mr. Bruce Jackson. So what are the key takeaways that you want the listener, or even the reader to take
I,
from your work?
I think there are a lot of different things. I think for people who are privileged, like I stated earlier, is about giving them proximity so we can get empathy and support from them. I think that's one of the things I want people to take away from it. I want people to believe in themselves, right? Bet on themselves
Yeah.
and believe that they can get through despite the situation that they're in. And I also want people to use their experience and to really share their experience, because I think it's the most incredible tool that we can use to inspire the next generation.
Right. Well, that's very noble of you. And I think, proximity is a powerful thing. I think we can be very removed. I'm an immigrant child. I came here, I did the whole education thing,
Right.
and sometimes, you get successful and you forget where you come from, or you leave the community. You don't forget, you leave the community and you're really not revitalizing it in any way,
Absolutely.
bringing back. So
Yeah.
this is kind of a reminder that you can still do that, right?
Absolutely. So I think people will get a lot out of it, but I also want people to support the book, because all the royalties from the book are going to serve underserved communities, not for profits.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. I didn't know that. I wish I
No,
was
that's
told that.
exactly, all the book royalties are going to 5 not-for-profits that I designated.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'll make sure I'll really pump this out to everyone. I'll market it out. So, do you think this is appropriate for a teenager to read? Because I would think it would be.
No, absolutely it is. I think that we want to try to start inspiring people as young as possible. A
Yeah,
teenager, absolutely. There's nothing that they haven't heard.
right. And some of the, they think that they're too removed from, but it can happen to them,
Absolutely.
So what would you say then to your younger self? Any messaging that you would say to your younger self?
To my younger self, again, I have to go back to that whole central theme. Listen, Bruce, believe in yourself, and bet on yourself. That's what I want young people to get on this. You have to. And you have several different options. You can be what you want to be.
Right.
You may have to just work hard at it. You're going to need mentors along the way. But think big and bold always. Think
Well,
big and bold.
maybe you don't feel it, but I feel like you believed in yourself. Like you went the road less traveled,
Yeah,
by
I
a
think
lot
I
of
did
people.
ultimately, but initially not pursuing my dream and passion for the theater,
Yeah.
the arts. I did not. But
Yeah.
once I got past that, I had the confidence I need just based on the 3 women in my life, my aunt, my grandmother, and my mother, right? That was my core existence. To try to make sure that I support them and basically be a generational support for the next generation that came after me. And I think that has worked, because many people in my family have gone to college since then.
Oh, that's one. I mean, all it takes is one example.
Absolutely. They
Representation
have
is
to see it to believe it.
see it, right? And say, like, well, look at Uncle Bruce. Uncle Bruce is doing it. I want to be just like him.
Absolutely. And that's the result of my efforts so far.
That's wonderful. So what is next for you? I mean, do you just go back to the office and say, guys, I wrote a book?
You know what? Everyone's asked me that. You know what my answer is? That God took me this far. I'm sure he has a plan of where I'm going next. And when I know, I'll certainly let you know.
You'll come back when you're, winning a Sundance award for, best short film from your life. It could happen. I'm just putting it out in the universe.
No, absolutely. I got calls already, to be honest with you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, is there anything that you want the listener to know about your work? This is your platform. I, for example, did not know that this was going to support nonprofits and not for profits. I think that's a beautiful thing. Where should they look for your book?
Oh, you can find it on all outlets, whether it's Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, your local bookstore. It's available on all sites that you
Yeah.
can get any other book.
Yeah. Any key takeaways? Anything else that you'd like to?
No, I just think that the key takeaways is that we all have to support each other. This is a journey that we have to support each other. One of the things, I was talking to someone, and I said, oftentimes people, African Americans, we're in certain leadership positions. And sometimes the organization that we support reflects this organization that we want to be diverse.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to hold us accountable for diversity as well, right?
Yes. Yes.
Each of the group that I mentioned have to be accountable for it as well, not just the Caucasian white men.
Yeah.
We have to certainly keep our foot on the accelerator and make sure they do the right thing, but that
Yeah.
doesn't excuse us for doing it.
That's absolutely right. So a friend of mine, she is the general counsel at the Gates Foundation. And she said to me, Stacey, because she's of color as well. And she said, unfortunately, the way the system is set up, it's set up that we support whatever is in place.
Mm-hmm.
So if you continue the way you are, where you think that you're doing good in a certain way, but you're not pushing on that pedal, you're going to only support maintaining the system as it is. It does not want to change.
Absolutely.
It'll get to a certain level, but you have to keep pushing because it doesn't want to change.
But she's right. And we have an obligation to push because we're only who we are because others pushed.
Exactly. And gave us the opportunities that we could recognize.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I loved having you on. Listeners, readers out there, the book is called Never Far From Home. It is an easy read. I was engrossed, like I said, from the prologue. It's a powerful book. Please pass it on to your friends and family and recommend it to them as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Bruce Jackson. Nice to meet you.
And thank you. It's great meeting you as well.
All right. Take care of yourself.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.